You are about to listen to a Jason Burgos exclusive interview.
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for giving me the time tonight. So I read up a little bit, and I knew you did the Sirius radio show. So what's this show about, and what do you do on the show? Are you a host, co-host? What's your story on that?
Yeah, I'm the host, I guess. I do the show. It's on Pac-12, all Pac-12 sports with Jeff Schwartz. We do the afternoon show. He's NFL vet, played University of Oregon, and then with the Giants and the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's how I know him from.
Yeah. So yeah, we do 5 days a week on Pac-12 Network. I used to do the show with Misha Tate on the Fight Channel, but when they gave me the full-time gig on the Pac-12 channel, I had to drop that, unfortunately.
And you've been doing this for a while now, right?
Yeah, I've been doing radio pretty full-time since 2010.
Was it always was it something that you went to school years ago for, or it's kind of something you just fell into because of your career, in a well-known sport?
I just backed into it. My original plan was to go into federal law enforcement, like the DEA or the FBI. Excuse me. And I had a fight coming up on a local card back in Utah, kind of a big show, and they brought myself and I think Josh Berkman in for an interview one night. And after we sat in studio for probably 40 minutes or so, and we were getting ready to leave, they were like, "Hey, one of our hosts on this twice a week nighttime MMA and boxing show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to leave. Do you want to try it out?" And I was like, "Does it pay?" And they're like, "Yeah." And it was like nothing. It was like $600 a month to do the 8 shows a month or whatever. And I was like, "Yeah, whatever, I'll do it. That sounds cool." And after I started doing it, I realized how much I enjoyed it, and I decided to try and focus on it. And 2 years, a year and a half later, the station that it was on had a morning drive time slot open up, and I just begged them for an audition for 3 weeks until they finally were like, "All right, whatever, we'll try you out." And then they tried me out, and I got the job.
Wow, very cool. Now, to talk about the MMA side of things, now, there were a few times during the season and in the playoffs that you were pushed to the brink and even lost, yet you persevered through and won each time. After all of that, does it start to feel like you have destiny on your side going into these finals?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if destiny is really a thing in mixed martial arts, especially. I think that I'm just lucky to have good people around me that are helping me prepare for even the worst case scenarios in the fight game. And I feel like the one thing I have above most fighters is just a willingness to keep going, even when the odds are stacked against you or it's not looking real good. So many people in the sport are worried about looking cool that they're not willing to just keep going. And that's something I've been able to capitalize on a couple times in my career, and it worked. Even in these most recent playoffs, and that quarterfinal fight with Dan Spahn, you can be like, well, he won the first round. The first round's weighted so heavily, that's probably going to be it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could go out there and put it all out and see if judges see it your way, if you can get a finish or whatever, and that's what we did. So.
Now, you fought the 2 fights in one night. Was it what you expected? Was it easier than you expected, harder than you expected, the process of having to wait in between the fights? What was your overall thoughts on having to go through both fights?
Well, luckily, Jeremy Horn's my coach, and he comes from a day in mixed martial arts where, tournaments were commonplace, and he's done 8-man tournaments in a single night before, and he prepared me as much as you can without actually doing it yourself. He's like, "Look, you don't get too high, you don't get too low, but when you win that first fight, you feel invincible. You're going to want to go back out and fight again. And every fighter's had that experience, right? You get a big win, and you go backstage, you talk to the media for 5 seconds, everything is right in the world. And you're just like, man, I wish I could jump back in there and do it right now. And when guys say that in the cage, they mean it, because you're riding this adrenaline high. And the fights were spaced out just enough that like sort of silly adrenaline rush was gone, but your body wasn't too cold, and the bumps and the bruises hadn't really set in yet. So the perfect format, and I felt like it was kind of what I expected, but even more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Because of the adrenaline high lasting so long and you victorious, is it helping to make it easier to keep yourself mentally focused going into that? Do you switch automatically? Is it like, okay, I'm done, the fight's over, a little post-fight interview, now you switch, okay, now I'm focusing on a semifinal opponent, just like that?
Yeah, for me, I usually, like, the fight game is very compartmentalized for me, so usually, I really start to worry about the fight about, I don't know, an hour before the actual bout begins. Like, that's when I really get warmed up and when I really start to dial in and focus and all that good stuff. And in this one, it was a little bit longer because instead of going back after the fight, instead of going back and just shaking hands and kissing babies and finding a milkshake, you go backstage, and it's like, hey, your next opponent's right down the road here, right down in the next locker room, so we're going to move you to a different locker room, and you're still watching the fights and seeing what the matchups are going to be. So it kind of forced you to stay dialed in and focused, and that was cool because it was the perfect amount of time, like I said, between fights to where it wasn't mentally exhausting to stay dialed in, but it was, it was just easy to be in that mode when the time came again.
Now, you've mentioned in interviews that this would be your last run in the sport, but you are only 35, and you've shown you can still compete at a high level. If you win the $1 million, will your competitive drive be stimulated to try and defend that title? Or even more so, if you do lose, are you going to feel like, damn, I was so close, and want to really come back and try one more time?
You know what? That is becoming $1 million question, because I definitely felt like, there's other things, I have other priorities and important things in my life, and it's not like I'm running out of, I don't know, gas in the tank at this point. I feel like I've finally gotten to a level, comfort-wise, inside of the cage where I can put my occasional bouts of skill on display. But my wife is now involved in my decision-making process, so she and I, after the tournament, are going to have to figure out exactly where the best move is, whether it's to go back and try and defend and win another million, or however much the prize purse is going to be next year, or whether it's going to be a good idea to focus on the broadcasting side. I don't know. I'm going to let it play out. We're going to see how my body feels, see how my wife feels, see how the results are and things like that. And I don't know, I felt pretty confident when the UFC got rid of me that was going to be the end for me. And we know how that goes, right? Like, yeah. I'm back here doing it again. So yeah, I'm still a relatively young guy. I've still got a lot of improvement that I could make in this sport. I'm still not anywhere near where I'd like to be skill-wise. So if I'm ever going to get to that level, I'm going to have to keep fighting.
Now, when one of the posts, I think it was after the semifinals, your responses made it seem like, okay, you're totally open for a comeback, and they perfectly pan the camera to your wife, and she just looks less than pleased. Was there any problems afterwards, or not even a problem, but is she the one more pushing for you to retire than it's you saying, I don't want to retire?
No, she is not pushing me one way or the other, really. She's just, I think it's stressful for your family members and your loved ones when you're getting in there and you're exposing yourself to the risks of a sport like this. And she saw, my fight against Sonny Marks when I knocked him out, and she was like, oh, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I got my liver kicked out through my asshole, and she was just like, ooh, that's tough. And then So the ups and downs, the roller coaster when you're married or close to people, they're riding that roller coaster with you to a certain extent. So I have not seen the replay to read her facial expression, but everyone has laughed about that and told me about it. So I'm going to have to go look at it, see if the body language tells me how I should be answering these questions.
Now, I've always thought when a fighter starts to think about life after fighting, they they lose that edge that they need to compete successfully. I mean, you said you thought you were done after UFC, and you're back, and you're already having the idea of this might be my last run, but you are so successful so far in these PFL playoffs. What do you feel has given you that ability to continue to keep that edge and get this far in the season, despite being open about might be the end?
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like people are discouraged about being honest with their plans because that sentiment exists. Like, oh, well, if you're not all in, if you're thinking about being done, then you're losing it, right? Mm-hmm. And if anything, I mean, knowing that the end is near should motivate you to be better, to work harder, to put your best foot forward so that what people remember you for is your best performance, is not like the getting knocked out 4 out of 5 fights at the end of Chuck Liddell's career or something like that. I don't ever want to be that guy. And there's kind of a refusal for high-level athletes, whether they're fighters or anyone else, to acknowledge that, like, the end is going to come, whether it's when you're 35 or 45 or whatever. The end is going to come, and you need to have a plan. You need to know where your life is going to take you after that. And people just don't like to talk about it because for some reason it denotes some sort of lack of focus or dedication to the sport in the public eye. And I don't buy that. Like, you're going to get the best version of me on my last fight, even more so than you saw in these last few, And whether that last fight is New Year's Eve or it's next New Year's Eve or it's the New Year's Eve after that, we haven't made a final decision on. But whenever that is, you can be sure you're going to get 100% dedication from me, and I'm going to try and make people remember who I was as a fighter with that final performance.
Now let's talk about New Year's Eve and your opponent, Vinny Magalhaes. I mean, Magalhaes has had possibly the best run of any fighter on the entire roster during the season, 4 first-round finishes. I mean, he's a veteran of the sport who has been around a long time. In the end, it's a classic striker versus grappler matchup. First, play the analyst, like on the radio show, on the Sirius show, and tell me what has he done to get guys to the ground and get submissions in his recent fights, and what can you do to stop that?
Well, what you've seen from Vinny in the playoffs was a different deal than what you saw from him in the regular season, right? Mm-hmm. And that's important for people to realize, that Vinny put something on tape for the playoffs that we have not seen from him before, and that was supreme, almost like disrespectful confidence in his own jiu-jitsu compared to his opponents, to where he's pulling guard in a high-level mixed martial arts fight with his opponent backed up against the cage. Like, that, who does that?
Yeah.
Well, someone with his credentials in jiu-jitsu. So we saw him against Raheem Cleveland throw up like the flying triangle, and he could have finished the choke. Instead, he decided to take the arm. And then against Bozagit Atayev, he did the same thing. He pulled guard. Bozagit did a better job of defending that initial, kind of floated out the top, but ended up on bottom because, of course, in jiu-jitsu transitions, Vinny's probably going to get ahead of you, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Bozagit ended up on bottom, and then went north-south to finish up that Kimura, and Bozagit turned the wrong way. And you can't even turn the wrong way against, like, a blue belt when he's setting up that shoulder lock, right? If you turn the wrong way against Vinny, he's going to rip your arm off, and he damn near did. So he obviously executed his game plan perfectly, but his opponents panicked as soon as they hit the ground with Vinny. Mm-hmm. And trust me, I understand why. He's formidable on the ground. I will not be panicking in those situations. Doesn't mean that I will submit Vinny instead of him submitting me. I'm not saying that. But I won't be panicking when it hits the ground. Mm-hmm. And in the regular season, he put better striking and better striking defense on display than we've seen from him in his past MMA fights. So this is by far the best version of Vinny we've ever seen. That's That's a lot to take in. That's a lot to take on, but we're going to be prepared for it.
Are you going to bring any kind of, specialized for this camp? Are you bringing in any unique training partners, any grappling, specialists, anything like that? Or are you confident who you work with now that they can still get you where you need to be to win this fight?
Well, I mean, you can't ever you're not going to find a guy who's as good as Vinny is on the ground, right? It's like if you're fighting Stephen Struve, how many 7-footers are there for you to really play tough? But, I train with Jeremy Horn full time. Most Jeremy Horn students, associates, friends, etc., are high-level jiu-jitsu practitioners. And people have never really seen my jiu-jitsu, I guess, because it's just not as much fun for me, and I don't do it that way. So, I'm confident in my level, especially of submission defense, and I've got some training partners who are maybe not Abu Dhabi champions, but are like, Pan Am champions, multiple-time world champs. I've got Brandon Ruiz, who you might have to do a little bit deeper digging to find his credentials than you would a guy like Vinny, but he's got unbelievably well-rounded game in folk style, Greco, submission wrestling, pure jiu-jitsu, and he's bigger than Vinny is. So I've been grappling with him for many years and, taking that abuse for a long time. So while I respect the hell out of Vinny's jiu-jitsu game, I really do, but he's not going to do anything that scares me.
Now, I asked many fighters, I talked to a lot of PFL fighters during the season and now into the playoffs about pressure for the playoffs. Is there any difference? And everybody's like, no, same thing. Now that you're in the finals, is there some level of added pressure than before because you are so close to the million? Or for you, are you like, look, I'm going to at least get 200,000. I'm possibly retiring anyway. Do you feel, there's less pressure on you? You can, because you know what's coming and you're fine with whatever way it goes.
No, I'm not fine with whatever way it goes. And if you talk with anybody on the roster in the PFL or probably UFC, Bellator, ONE, Ryzen, anywhere, nobody's like, yeah, I'm just hoping that I can win some money in my fight. Everyone on the PFL roster signed up to make $1 million. Nobody signed up because there was a chance, they were paying good money. They paid me the same show and win for my regular season fights as the UFC paid me, right? That's not why I signed up. It was because I can win $1 million. And that's what I'm here for. I said that in the cage after I won the fight with Dan Spahn. Dan Spahn's a good fighter. I didn't come to beat Dan Spahn. I didn't come to beat Shmilino Rama. I didn't even come to beat Vinny. I came to win $1 million and that pretty damn cool belt that comes with it. So, there is more pressure. Anyone who tells you there's not more pressure on a title fight or $1 million fight is lying. Why do people pretend, oh, no, it's all the same? It's not all the same. Not every fight is created the same. Not every training day is created the same. These are special opportunities. We're going to prepare for it like it's a special opportunity. But at the end of the day, you go out and you execute your skill set as effectively as you can every time you get in there. So I guess that is the one way in which it's the same.
Our fighters, you've been around a lot of fighters. Our fighters, do they lie about the pressure because they're trying to even fool themselves in a way so they don't let the pressure get to them?
I think so. Fighters tell me all the time, tell each other all the time, tell the media all the time, yeah, no, it's not scary. It's just normal. This is what we do. If you're not scared of what's happening in this sport, you don't know what you're doing. You're getting into a cage with another grown man of equal size and probably relatively similar skills who is going to choke you unconscious, knock you unconscious, break an arm, blow out your knee, whatever. If you don't have a healthy fear of the consequences in this sport, you should not be in this sport. So people just need to be honest, man. It's okay to be nervous walking into a fight. If you're not, you're either a sociopath, or
I was going to say that,
or you don't understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
The absence of fear is not courage, right? Courage is being afraid or nervous or whatever and continuing the course of action and going in to compete anyway, or going into the fight no matter what. So when people try and fool you into thinking that they're macho and brave and whatever, okay, like, I guess you're a better man than me because you're not scared. Well, I'm going to go against a multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, and it freaks me out a little bit, but guess what? I'm going to fight my ass off anyway, and I'm going to knock him out.
Now, this is your 11th year in the sport. I mean, you took 2 years away. Is there a part of you that feels? I mean, you talked about, you're ready to retire. So on some level, I'm sure you got to be satisfied with your career if you're willing to do that. But do you feel maybe you need to win this on a level to prove it to yourself, to prove it to the industry of all the work you put in, that you are as good as you felt you were?
Yes, absolutely. Because when the betting odds come out for this fight, they might already be out. I'm going to be a 12-1 underdog or whatever, and people are going to be like, oh, this guy's got no chance to win. And, that's how people felt about my run in the UFC. That's how people felt about me coming into the PFL season. That's how they're going to feel about me in this championship round. Like, I think because of my style, because of my physique, because I have fun with this, and I goof around at weigh-ins and stuff, people have a hard time taking me seriously as a contender and as a fighter. Well, a couple decisions go a different way in the UFC. We're having a different conversation. I beat Vinny Magalhaes in a championship bout on New Year's Eve at Madison Square Garden and get a belt and $1 million. Maybe the conversation changes a little bit. Maybe it doesn't. And in that case, and people still want to be critical, I'll just be like, okay, well, I have a belt and $1 million, so I don't care what you think. Shut up. But I do very much feel like, I'm viewed as like a marginal journeyman fighter, and I fancy myself something better than that. So I guess I got to prove it.
So on December 31st, sometime well after 7 o'clock at night, what do you think people will be writing and saying as a result of your fight between you and Vinny Magalhaes?
They'll say something about O'Connell pulls off a huge upset win after getting in trouble in light heavyweight championship of PFL bout, because that's usually the way things go for me, right? Mm-hmm. Is I take a couple punches or kicks that I shouldn't. Maybe I get put in a bad spot on the ground, and then I find a way to win. So that's what you'll all be talking about, the come from behind victory or the upset victory.